Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video. So before I get into today's video, I want to say a big massive thank you to James Orsini for sending in some pretty awesome Imperial Guard army pictures. These are absolutely fantastic, mate. I love all the conversions you've done on them. I love especially the cavalry. As a Bretonnian player at heart, I definitely recognise where those cavalry models came from. And I could give them a big thumbs up. So thank you very much for sending this in. As always, guys, if any of you have any cool battle pictures or army pictures, action shots, please send them in to, or post them on my Facebook page. And it's a Mordian Glory Facebook profile. It's not a page, it's a profile. So you add me as a friend, and then I'll accept your request. And then you can post your pictures on there. Absolutely fantastic. There we go. If you've got any cool ones, send them in to me. So, what are we going to be looking at today? We're going to be looking at list building. So, essentially, how to transition from being a newer player with a newbie list to a better player with a better list, maybe even a good list. So, a lot of newer players to 40k will go out there and buy lots of random stuff because it looks cool. You'll buy, some tanks, some Taurochs, some Wyverns, some infantry, blah blah blah. You'll buy a selection of units, and they'll be pretty good. But you'll be having fun, you'll be rolling dice and everything, and that's fine at first. Okay, but then maybe what starts happening is maybe you notice you're not really winning any games, or maybe you notice that when you were winning at first, you're not doing as well, and then you start losing, and you're thinking, hang on, what's going on here? What's really important is when you're playing your games is to keep an eye out for what does well every single game and what does poorly every single game. Now, there are some just ostensibly bad choices in the 40k codex, but there's some people that say there's no such thing as a bad unit choice. Well, that's just not true. There are some bad unit choices. The Death Strike missile, for example, is a very cool weapon, but it is useless. And what you want to be doing is keeping an eye out for what units perform consistently well every single game. Okay? Because, now I want to say that doesn't necessarily mean things that absolutely did loads of damage every single game. I mean things that performed well. So if you're taking infantry, for example, did you find that you were able to successfully screen against enemy assault units, or did you find that the enemy just charged and tied up all your tanks? Did you find that the infantry you had, an infantry squad and a chimera successfully? That combo was successful at taking an objective every game. Likewise, you might have found that this is a very obvious example, but you might have realised that putting your heavy weapon teams inside your chimeras at the beginning of the game, that wasn't really working for you. Or you might have found that your multi-laser heavy flamer chimera just isn't doing it for you anymore. It's just not doing it for you. It just doesn't fit into your style of play. Or, loads of different options. They're not necessarily bad things that I point out there. What I'm trying to get across here, guys, is those units aren't working well within your list. Okay? Because you might have a certain style, and then you've got a couple of random outliers that you're using. So you might be mostly mass infantry. But then you've got a random Lehman Russ or a random Hydra. What you're looking for is units that consistently do well in your style of list. So, when you've identified those units, you want to start focusing on them and possibly purchasing a few more of them. So you might be finding, you've got your first 1,000-point game and you've got one Lehman Russ, and you're finding that your Lehman Russ is an absolute solid workhorse every single game, but he can't do it all himself. He can't pick it up all the slack himself. So you end up, in that situation, what you'd want to do is you'd be like, well, I want to buy another Lehman Russ, and I want to I want to swap out some stuff that isn't doing very well. So then you look at what's not doing very, very well in your list. And you're like, you know what has never done anything for me every game? My conscripts. They just, ever since the FAQ, they just sit around dying. They're not doing anything. And I'm spending, I've got 2 blobs of these guys. I'm spending 240 points on them. That really doesn't seem like a good idea to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop my conscripts and take an extra Leman Russ. And then what you might find is that you are like, well, I've got my extra Leman Russ now. They're doing loads and loads of damage, but now I don't feel like I've got enough infantry. So it's because I've not got enough infantry and because I've dropped all my conscripts, I've not got enough infantry, so I'm not able to screen as effectively. So you have a look around your list again, and you're like, well, I've got the firepower now. I've got the firepower, but I need to find the screening. Okay, right. So you play a few more games. And you realise, well, hang on. My Astropath is never doing anything for me all game. Okay, he's not able to. I'm playing it in a meta where my opponent's got loads of psychic, loads of ability to shut down my psychic powers, and he's just not doing anything for me. So I'll get rid of him. And maybe like, well, hang on, I'm using this Hydra, and this Hydra is really not doing anything for me. I don't face any flyers. I face Space Marines every single game. Okay, right. I'll get rid of I won't use my Hydra anymore. Okay, now suddenly I've got another 130 points, 140 points. Okay, cool. I can now get myself another 4 infantry squads. Boom. Now I've got the screening. And so what you're realising is, hang on, now I've got the infantry to screen the tanks are able to provide the more firepower. So I've got more efficiency in my list because I've no longer got those units which aren't doing anything. And you might find that you're in a meta where having loads of... That's a broad brush example. You might find yourself in a meta where you're like, my opponents know every single game that my Leman Russes are my main damage dealers. So they're turning up every one of my meta uses loads of vehicles. So everyone's got loads of anti-tank. So my Leman Russes aren't lasting past turn 1 or 2. They're not doing anything. In that situation, you're like, well, no one's taking any anti-infantry. So I'm going to drop my vehicles and instead I'm going to bring loads more infantry. And see how that works out. Maybe I'm going to take some Bulgrins. Maybe I'm going to take some veterans. Maybe I'm going to take some regular infantry. And that's how you work it out. And it's all about, just identifying the weaknesses in your list and identifying the strengths in your list and just working out which units do well every game and which units don't do well every game. And what you might find is you thought something wasn't doing very much. Maybe like, that Ashpath is never doing anything. But then you realise, hang on, every turn he's been stopping my enemy getting 1 psychic power off. I really need him back in my list. And it's all just about just trying out different things. Now this is very, I've talked about this concept before, and I call it like list distillation, where you're distilling down the perfect list for your area. And it's sort of a similar concept, but it's more just about being aware of your style of list, being aware of what is working and what isn't working. It's a similar concept, but what I want to say is a really key thing I want to stress to newer players, which I don't think I mentioned in my list distillation video a few months ago. I want to stress the fact that it's really important not to have sort of like a schizophrenic approach to list building. And I am really guilty of this. I rarely use the same list 2 games in a row, and that's really bad. That's really, 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 really bad. What you want to not do is have a game and in that one single game you just get terrible dice rolls with your Wyvern. Every single time you just get like 4 dice, 3 dice, 4 dice, 5 dice. That's 4 shots, 5 shots. don't, if a unit has a bad game once, don't just drop it. There could just be bad luck. I honestly recommend you playing 4 to 5 games with a list before changing anything up. Even if it's doing terribly, just give it 3 to 4 games, maybe 5. Because you just don't know. You just might just be having a string of bad luck, and it'll turn round. You know, that can just happen. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I know it's similar to what I've talked about before, but I do think it's a really, really important concept. It's one that you don't want to lose sight of. It's definitely one that newer players tend to struggle with. Overall, one thing I want to say is the whole list sort of schizophrenia thing can be a real problem when you've got like a really big collection. And I know that's a bit like going, oh my god, I've got such a big collection and it's causing my list building to be bad. No, I'm not, you know, like, I'm not boasting about that. That's not what I mean. What I mean is when you, as Imperial Guard, your army is never really finished. So you're constantly buying more stuff and just trying out new units and blah, blah, blah. And when you've got to, even as an experienced player, you've got to make sure that you're not just swapping things out every single time. Yeah, it's cool to run a concept list now and then. But if you're trying to get better, and especially if you're practicing for a tournament, you really just want to stick it out for 4 or 5 games before you change anything. When I played first started, and this is, I don't want to go off on one, I'll try and keep it short. When I first started playing with Steel Legion, everyone told me you want to be taking Talon. Okay? Everyone said the only way to get Imperial Guard tanks to work was Talon Desert Raiders. And I just didn't believe them. I said, I'm going to try and make Steel Legion work. And what actually turned out is it turned out that Steel Legion are really fucking good. Steel Legion are really, really good. Talon are great, don't get me wrong, but Steel Legion are really, really good. And what people... And I lost my first 3 games of Steel Legion because I was running autocannons, autocannon Lehman Russes. I was running like heavy flamers on my and multi-lasers on my chimeras because that's what I'd always thought about running. I was running multi-lasers on my scout sentinels, and I was running heavy weapons in my infantry squads when I didn't really want to. And I basically played 5 games like 3 games like that, and I lost every single one of them. And that's when I was like, okay, autocannon Lehman Russes aren't working. Swap those out for. I tried some. I tried like the Eradicator and tried a few more. Tried 2 or 3 different I tried a couple of Eradicators and a couple of battle cannons and a couple of Punishers and a couple of battle cannons and then a couple of Plasma and a couple of battle cannons. And I noticed straight away the battle cannons were fine. They were consistent to get every single time. The Punishers, I found I didn't really, after 4 games, I found I didn't really need the Punishers. I already had loads of strength. Good heavy. I already noticed that heavy bolters were good, so I've been trying heavy bolters out on my chimeras, so I didn't need them. Eradicators, I wasn't finding had enough punch. Then I came to executioners, and were like, okay, plasma, good times. And then I was like, right, well, I've started using hull heavy bolters on my chimeras, but I'm still using those multi-laser turrets. I don't think I like multi-laser turrets. Let's try out double heavy bolter turrets. Right, these are working. These are working much better. And then I started winning games. And I lost my first 3 games Steel Legion. Then with the original list. Then lost my next 3 with my most distilled list. With a slightly updated list, I should say. And then I have basically from that point on, in a normal game, not lost it. And I've ran that list at a tournament recently, and I identified some things that I needed to do. You know, I needed psychic defense. Psychic powers really did a number on me in 2 games. I really needed psychic powers. So I'm going to be adding in astropaths and to my list, my Steel Legion list. And so even now, after running that army for 6 months, it has changed very gradually over that 6 months. And I think now, if I get a couple of psychers in that list, it'll be perfect. I think that's as good as it will possibly be. So guys, that's the concept. Don't be too schizophrenic. Don't be changing stuff too much, but don't be afraid to change as well. And I know sometimes it can be really difficult because we get very attached to certain units, but we've got to be, if we want to get better, we've just got to identify the strengths and weaknesses in our lists. So guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.